Morning. Thank you all so much for being here. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Steph Hughes. I'm co-founder of Fair Go for Queensland Women, founded in 2018 in response to concerning developments internationally in relation to gender identity and how it is impacting upon women, girls, children, lesbians and gay men. On the 2nd of December 2022, Queensland's Attorney-General, Minister for Justice, Minister for Women, Minister for Prevention of Domestic and Family Violence said, "Some groups will try to cloak their transphobia in the guise of women's safety, making claims about trans women accessing women's spaces, including change rooms or even domestic violence shelters. I want to be clear, there is no evidence, domestically or internationally, to support these outrageous claims." How did the Minister come to this conclusion? In correspondence to IWD Brisbane Meanjin and Sal Grover last year, the Minister for Women referred to the process in Scotland about self-ID positively. That self-ID has fallen apart in Scotland so spectacularly is precisely because of the obvious insanity of enabling men convicted of rape to be placed in the female prisoner state if he says he is transgender. It also fell apart because of the unsuitability of the so-called risk assessment process that approved for transfer to the female prisoner state a man held in custody indefinitely because of the unmanageable risk he poses in the community. The slow-moving train wreck in Scotland should be cause for reconsideration for Shannon Fentiman and indeed all those who seek to progress the notion that a man is a woman if he says so. The self-ID bill in Scotland was passed on the 22nd of December and it has been a slow-moving train wreck ever since, showing the bill up to be ill-advised and unsupportable nonsense. Between the 15th of January and the last couple of weeks, no fewer than 6 separate males in Scottish prison came to media attention in all the wrong ways for people who want everyone to get on board with sex self-ID. And those who say there is no evidence. Not quite looking like the shining example that the Minister for Women proposed to Sal and IWD Brisbane Meanjin. The Attorney-General also said, "No one who engages in this process will do so lightly. It is a deeply personal process and a decision that must be respected." This notion too is found to be wanting. For those who don't know, Fair Go for Queensland Women, although you now do because Sal just told you, we've obtained data from Queensland Corrective Services for those in prison on the 30th of June of each year for the past 10 years in Queensland prisons. The data shows that males are in prison at far higher rates than females across the general population, and that's just a continuation of international trends that we've known for a very long time. The evidence for the past 10 years also bears out and confirms that males who identify as transgender also commit or are charged with offences at far higher rates than females who identify as transgender, thereby proving that sex matters. On the 30th of June last year, there were 63 males who self-identified as transgender in the male prisoner state in Queensland, and 0 females who identify as transgender. If the Attorney-General gets the bill passed, those 63 males, which includes 6 on charges or convictions of murder, could demand to be housed in the female prisoner state. This also includes 13 males whose most serious charge or conviction is aggravated sexual assault. Now remember, this is a tiny and vulnerable population who allegedly pose no risk to women and girls in single-sex spaces, or so we were told by the Minister for Women. If that is truly the case, Why are there 13 males who say they are transgender in prison for aggravated sexual assault when out of all of Queensland women at that same date, there were 16 in prison for the same charge and conviction? How does that make sense? Multiple women have spoken out about the fear and intimidation when female prison estates allow males to be housed in them. Female policing and correctional officers are also starting to speak out about policies that require them to conduct intimate searches on men who say they are transgender. Why do their lived experiences mean nothing to the Minister for Women? The number of anonymous responses and confidential responses to the recent consultation in Queensland, 36%, also speaks to the worries the public has about the situation and indeed the culture of name-calling that the Attorney-General herself has contributed to. I note too that the behaviour of trans activists, we might have had a recent example, the behaviour of trans activists themselves has contributed to this, including Queensland men who publicly post on social media, for example, "TERFs are like prisons, best abolished." Critics like to say this is about trans people. It is not. It is about males, and it's about the erosion of women's single-sex spaces and boundaries. It's about our consent, and it is about the clear evidence that shows that male pattern violence doesn't go anywhere when a man says that he is transgender. In The Australian yesterday, a spokesperson for Just Equal claimed women are crying wolf. How insulting. Crying wolf to raise our worries, and then goes on to say that there's no evidence of cisgender men fraudulently attempting to gain access to specific areas. Frankly, when a man believes he has a special gendered soul, that makes as much difference to me as whether he drives a red car or a blue one. It is because they are male, and women's spaces are not for any type of male. The same line is run by the Parliamentary Committee in the article, that there is nothing to suggest a systemic risk to girls and women from men who identify as women.
Liars.
Honestly, what do we have a Minister for Women for if there's no systemic risk to women from men? Why do we have task forces and national plans to address violence against women if male violence is not a systemic risk to women and girls? This is a clear recognition of the long-term, international and overarching risk. So it's a nonsense to keep trotting out this same line. If this is all people have to fall back on, that's a clear indication to me that those who seek to discount our concerns are not listening one little bit. There is also the long-term study regarding outcomes for individuals in Sweden, published in 2011. That study found that males who underwent gender-related surgery committed offences at rates not significantly different to male controls. So that evidence is over a decade old. The Attorney-General seems to be suggesting that trans women are women. Well, if that's the case, why are these so-called women offending at such high rates compared to women? What makes them women? Why, in 2017, were there almost as many trans women in prison for aggravated sexual assault as women for the whole of the Queensland population? Why, if male patterns of violence and criminality aren't persisting? Why was there one woman in Queensland prison last year in relation to child pornography offences? That's their term, not mine. And this one woman could actually be a man who has already had his birth certificate changed. Why was there one woman and 3 men who identified as transgender for the same charge or offence? And indeed, what makes it safe to open all women's spaces to males who say they're transgender when some, including the creator of the trans flag, openly talk about stealing women's underwear, and others who also openly talk about how their pornography use led to the formation of their gender identity beliefs. When the Attorney General says there is no evidence, what she really means is that she is actively ignoring, discounting and disregarding the large and small indignities and risk self-ID imposes upon women and girls. What she means is that when self-ID laws are created, they're created in such a way to make data collection nigh on impossible, and that there is no place with self-ID that we are aware of that has active mechanisms in place to follow up and review how these laws are impacting upon women and girls. What she means is that in cases such as Ireland, the laws were brought in under cover of more popular reforms, leaving the population wondering after it already happened, what on earth, how did such a drastic change get snuck through? A la Denton's. What she means is that male violence is hidden in female data, and there is no way to accurately track the violence committed by this section of the male population. What she really means is that no government to date has acted diligently and ethically in relation to women's reasonable and supported concerns, and they have not been objective or impartial on this matter. If Shannon Fentiman actually could say no evidence, she would in fact have access to information that shows that males who say they are transgender are charged or convicted of crimes at rates similar to women. That's a basic starting point, and she doesn't have that. We have the exact opposite, in fact. What she does have is a department beholden to ACON and its ilk, a vice-like grip on a notion that can't be rationally supported, her eyes closed and her fingers in her ears.